they were from the district of Skandera. 5 days ago, they'd been ordered into the town square with their menfolk. They were then separated. All the males between 15 and 50 were taken to one side, and the women were just told to get on the road and go. And 5 days later, they pitched up in a dreadful physical and emotional state. So while we are concentrating on this, it's worth remembering that this ethnic cleansing has in no way stopped.
Well, let's go to Macedonia now and get the latest from Emma Hurd. What's the feeling in the camps there?
Well, there's been a very similar picture to that Peter Sharp was describing. The people are still arriving at these camps. Several thousand came over the border into Macedonia yesterday. We understand several more thousand are on their way today. They're amassed at the border. The problem the Macedonian authorities has had is that they don't know where to send these people yet. They're trying to get space for them into the refugee camps. The Macedonian authorities aren't very keen to have them in this country at all, but gradually these people are being allowed through. Some of them have been travelling for around a week. Finally, when they get to these refugee camps, they will get shelter, they will get food, but they won't get
Destruction of Kosovo, the Serb artillery at work at Jablanica and the surrounding area. The Kosovar Albanians from here are left with no option but to flee. The exodus continues. The bombing continued, NATO undaunted by its admission it had hit a convoy of refugees in Kosovo. Oil refineries in Pančevo and Novi Sad were struck again. The Yugoslav news agency said 7 people were injured at Pančevo. These are familiar targets, but it seems NATO is casting its net wider. Montenegro was hit after largely being spared the NATO onslaught in the last 2 weeks as it tried to steer a neutral course in the conflict between Belgrade and NATO. Mystery still surrounds the attack on the refugee convoy in Kosovo yesterday. The Yugoslav authorities say the attack left over 70 people dead. NATO described it as a tragic accident. Western journalists were taken to the scene of the attack and to see the wounded in hospital, but some observers say the scenes of carnage they witnessed did not tally with the pilot's account of what happened. While expressing regret for the incident, President Clinton said the campaign had to continue. These are still pouring over Kosovo's borders, the biggest influx in the last 10 days, says the UNHCR. Some observers believe now this marks the final push by the Serb military to empty Kosovo of its Albanian population. Janet Barry, BBC News.
In the early evening sky, at least one NATO bomber was clearly visible as Yugoslav military targets were hit on the outskirts of this capital. It was the first attack here in over a week. The raid came as Serbian nationalists were demonstrating in Podgorica in support of President Milosevic and against the pro-Western government of this small republic. These hardline Serbs want Montenegro to drop its neutrality and accept there's a war with NATO. Montenegro's moderate prime minister struggles to maintain stability amid rising tension and rumours of coups, such as a Yugoslav army takeover. In Cetinje, the old capital, opposition to strident Serbian nationalism is visible. There's a rash of slogans demanding independence for Montenegro. In this forgotten Balkan backwater, there's intense frustration. Many believe the Montenegrin Republic has become a captive state in the repressive Yugoslav Federation. There's nostalgia for the days when this was the world's 27th independent nation. Lining the main street are mansions that early this century were Western embassies, a measure of Montenegro's status then. The royal palace is lovingly preserved, just as it was when Montenegro's last king left 80 years ago and independence was lost. Now the palace is a museum, a poignant reminder to Montenegrins of what might have been. Road today is on a short leash. The only hard fact is that there's a sense of betrayal and grievance on both sides of the political divide. Brian Barron, BBC News, the Montenegrin Republic.
It's a poignantly familiar scene. A soldier has a farewell cup of tea with his family. They know but don't say they may never see each other again. The oddity in this tableau is that the soldier is proudly Russian and his country is not at war. But Yuri is a fervent Nationalist Party supporter, proudly telling me of their triumphs, who says NATO deserves to have its teeth kicked in by the Russians. He makes last-minute arrangements with volunteers who will go with him to Yugoslavia to fight alongside the Serbs, even though his country is standing back. Is it a cause worth dying for?
I know what the war is. I was shooting people, people were shooting me. I have been wounded 5 times. I don't want to die, I don't want to. But if it's needed to give my life, I will do it.
There's an air of panic in this tiny flat in an extremely modest apartment block in St. Petersburg. But the issue of the Slavic people being attacked by the West overrides all other considerations.
Of course, I worry about my son. It's not the first time he's leaving, but it's impossible to get used to it. War is war, it's violence. We are trying not to show our worries. We do not want to make him nervous.
Yuri and his comrades complete the paperwork at the airport for their journey into conflict. They don't support ethnic cleansing. They say it's a tragedy that women and children are suffering. But their motivation is to join the Serbs in battle before the war undermines Russian integrity. When this group of men meet up with their contacts in Belgrade, they'll be taken to training camps outside the city in preparation for ground combat. They believe the West is moving into this next phase of the war. It's now become, they believe, inevitable. Even here in the elegant 18th century city of St. Petersburg, there's unease about NATO's bombing campaign. They fear for their own security because the alliance's newest recruit, Estonia, is just 80 miles away. Judith Dawson, Sky News, St. Petersburg.
Says Yugoslav troops have resumed the expulsions of ethnic Albanians from Kosovo with full force. As many as 20,000 refugees are massing at the border with Albania. Thousands more are seeking refuge in Macedonia.
Oil watched the frightened column entering Albania this morning, bringing more tales of persecution.
The Serbs turned on the tap again this morning, disgorging another flood of homeless and dispossessed, following the route so many hundreds of thousands have taken over the last 2 weeks. Crossing into Albania at the Marina border post, once again the scene of so much misery and grief. The Serbs opened the border at 7:30 this morning. Aid officials here say up to 20,000 people are expected across today. Alma Suluka was a translator for the OSCE monitors in Kosovo. She was hiding for 2 weeks, hunted by Serb troops.
They throw a bomb in that house that I was hiding, so I had to change. I changed my house more than 7 or 8 days, eight times, sorry. So after that, after they bombed, they throw the hand grenade. I had to move to another house, and in that house they came and they were asking for the young people, and I was hiding also in the roof for some hours because they catch some young people, young guys who work for the sea, and they killed Ardian Kazas.
Refugees said young men in Pristina were being rounded up by the Serbs, given military uniforms and ordered to work on their defense positions. The expulsions were carried out with such speed that many families were separated in their flight to the border. The sheer numbers of people involved are staggering. There's said to be 6,000 refugees in this queue, which is backed up about 10 miles. But aid organizations believe anywhere from 70 to 100,000 people are now on the move in southern Kosovo in this frenzy of ethnic cleansing. Peter Sharp, Sky News, on the Kosovo-Albanian border.
The moderate Kosovo-Albanian leader, Dr. Ibrahim Rugova, has been meeting the Serbian leadership in Belgrade. 2 weeks ago, Serb television showed him meeting President Milosevic, but later reports said he was under house arrest in Pristina. Tim Friend, Sky News.
Feeling less secure.
Movement on the border again, 800 through here at Blace Crossing, with stories of up to 1,500 on buses and a train turned back by the Serbs. After a pause of a week, the influx of human rejection has started again. There are reports of up to 6,000 waiting and desperate to cross over at varied points along the frontier.
We have about 800 people waiting at the Yazince border crossing with indications that there are 3,000 to 5,000 right behind them. And at the third and smallest border crossing, which is actually not an official crossing, called Lojane, there are approximately 1,000 to 1,500 who are waiting for clearance to come into Macedonia.
Anticipating this, a last gesture from the British troops, fresh tents for 3,000 more. One other change, the harrowing anecdotes of brutal eviction have all but stopped. Good news perhaps, but it also means that Kosovar Albanians no longer need to be pushed from their homes, they just want to go. These latest arrivals were met by UN refugee workers under the spotlight now, with NATO's presence all but wound down ahead of a lunchtime handover and a return to their original business.
We, the UK, have decided to deploy a second battle group. I have a role to ensure that that deployment into theatre works. So my message to the people here is that our real role is trying to ensure that you can go home.
So the anticipated exodus will be met by NGOs and the Macedonian authorities. NATO's commanders here say it'll work, they want it to work, but in a very short time their absence may yet be sorely missed. Andrew Wilson, Sky News at Barrage de Camp in Macedonia.
Well, we saw in the... You are ready to go into Kosovo if the political will is that you should.
Well, our focus is switching now to receive the second battle group that the Prime Minister announces coming into theatre from the UK perspective, and that will be happening in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Again, as I've said a couple of times this morning, it's not up to me to decide when the time is right, but when Her Majesty's government do so, of course, we will respond accordingly.
Now, you introduced in your briefing Vanessa Ademi, who is one of the refugees. I think she's with you there now. Her story...
She's right with me.
Indeed, presumably her story is typical. Vanessa, I don't know if you can hear me, but what are the circumstances of you finding yourself in the camp? What was it that drove you out?
What drove you? Why did you leave? Why did you leave?
Look, I was at my flat, my apartment, so the Serbian military police came to us and they told us to leave our flat, to leave our place. So we were leaving by force, by violence. So we left our place because we didn't have any guns. So they had masks and they had big guns like that, and we didn't have. So we had to leave the place. Yeah.
Vanessa, I mean, you speak excellent English. I know you've got some family over in this country. What is your message to them?
He knows that you have a brother in England.
Yeah.
What would you like to say to your brother?
Hello. My brother is very nice, so I would like to meet him as soon as possible. Everybody like brothers, everybody like sisters, everybody like relationships. So it's my big brother, and I would like to say to him, hello, my big brother, and I will meet you. So
there we go.
Vanessa, if I could just...
Vanessa is... Go on then. Yep.
Sorry, just one more for Vanessa. You were talking earlier at the Minister of Defence briefing, Vanessa, about your concern about NATO troops leaving the camp. Why do you have those concerns?
Do you understand?
Yeah. So all of the refugees in this camp are afraid about NATO's leaving because they are afraid of Macedonian police. So they are they're like beasts. Bad, worse than Serbian police. They are worse than Milosevic.
Well,
Yeah.
Vanessa, thank you for that. Brigadier, I better just bring you in on that. Is that your experience? Is that your fear?
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have fear.
Yeah, Vanessa is afraid. Vanessa is afraid, and she's not alone in being afraid.
Yeah.
And when you've been through what children have been through, you cannot expect other than they are fearful of what the future holds for them. And I think that we, the NATO troops, and we, the British troops in particular, who've been heavily involved in the refugee camps in the last 2 or 3 weeks, can be very proud that Vanessa and others have found this camp a safe place to be. They found us to be people who, although we wear a uniform, nonetheless recognise their humanity and their individualism and all that you've heard that Vanessa has said. And so she is fearful. But I want to stress that we're not just walking away from these camps. We are leaving behind a strong party to work alongside the UNHCR and the NGOs who will live here in this camp. And we're leaving them too to work alongside the Macedonian police. And Vanessa, And I only met this morning, so she will not know what has gone on in the last week or two. And I don't just say this because I want to counter what she said. That is her perspective, and she has every right to be fearful. But I want to say how hard the Macedonian police and the Macedonian government are working to deal with this problem. It is an enormous crisis that they have had to face. And they have been fearful too, as many people in the Balkans are fearful. And I think they've found us standing alongside them and guiding them and helping them and giving them encouragement. I have noticed a real change, and only yesterday, working with the Chief of Police, we have been again able to bring families together from different camps scattered around the northern end of Macedonia. And therefore, I'm not saying they're perfect. I'm not saying they're perfect at all. But they are doing their best. They're working hard. And this party of troops that I will leave here, and the same in other locations, will work alongside them and reassure them as well as reassure the refugees.
Brigadier Tim Cross, Vanessa Ademi, we wish you both well. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Those borders with Albania, Macedonia and Montenegro. Aid agencies believe they're leaving now at the rate of 750 an hour. The NATO pressure of time to achieve its goals. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees says it believes the Serbian authorities are now in their final push to rid Kosovo of its entire Albanian population. Janet.
Flüchtlinge tief gezeichnet. Inzwischen platzen die Flüchtlingslager aber aus allen Nähten. Hier in Tetovo zum Beispiel waren Bundeswehrsoldaten heute den ganzen Tag im Einsatz und bauten Zelte auf. Sie sollen 2000 weiteren Vertriebenen Platz bieten. Und allein heute Abend werden hier noch Hunderte erwartet. In den kommenden Tagen sollen zusätzlich alle Flüchtlingscamps mit Internetanschlüssen und Mobiltelefonen...
Kryeministri Majko është shprehur I kënaqur mes uniformave amerikane në Rinas. Së bashku me ministrin shqiptar të mbrojtjes dhe ambasadoren amerikane në Shqipëri, zoti Majko vizitoi seksionin e trupave amerikan. Rreth 1000 trupa përgatisin prej ditësh fushimin e kontingentit amerikan që do të vendoset në Shqipëri në kuadrin e misionit humanitar. Ka qenë një kërkesë e qeverisë shqiptare dhe më pas një vendim I ministrave të jashtëm të vendeve anëtare të NATO-s, ai që I dha okejin 8000 trupave me mision të tillë. Sa kaq, Shqipëria kishte përgatitur këtë me një vendim për lehtësira aeroportuale për një rast të tillë javë më parë. Ndërkohë vetë Shqipëria është angazhuar në këtë moment në një program të intensifikuar të partneritetit për paqe, ndërsa vlerësohet të ketë realizuar me shumë sukses për kushtet e saj pritjen e mbi 300.000 refugjatëve të luftës. Duke vlerësuar momentin, kryeministri shqiptar u shprehu trupave amerikan mirënjohjen e popullit të tij për ndihmën konkrete ndaj Shqipërisë dhe mbështetjen amerikane në organizmat ndërkombëtare. Gjithashtu I vlerësuar mbetet fakti që faktorët më të rëndësishëm politik në botë janë të unifikuar në veprimet e tyre kundër dhunës me emrin e Miloševićit.
Turned on the tap again today, unleashing another flood of refugees that poured across the border at Marina, the scene of so much suffering and grief over the past few weeks. Thousands of them came on foot, exhausted, staggering the last 100 yards to safety. At the Serb border post, troops could be seen carrying out the final indignity of ethnic cleansing, removing the license plates of the departing refugees. In 8 hours, more than 4,000 people had streamed through, and still they kept coming. Aid agencies concerned for their security, so close to Serb positions.
I'm extremely worried. A few hundred meters from me, there are some snipers and military deployment in the mountain on the side of the border. 2 days ago, we have been shelled there.
Today, refugees said young men in Pristina had been rounded up, issued with Serb uniforms and put to work digging trenches. Former OSCE translator Anna Saluka watched it all on the run, hiding in an attic.
They are like animals. They are not soldiers. They are like animals. They don't have feelings. They used to kill children. They used to kill girls. They used to kill the old people. They are animals.
The expulsions were carried out with such speed that many families were separated in their flight to the border. But there was one moment of relief for Alma, reunited with her father, who had also escaped from the Serbs today.
The sheer numbers of people involved are staggering. There's said to be 6,000 refugees in this queue, which is backed up about 10 miles. But aid organizations believe anywhere from 70 to 100,000 people are now on the move in southern Kosovo in this frenzy of ethnic cleansing. Peter Sharp, Sky News, on the Kosovo-Albanian border.
Macedonia is also struggling with the latest influx of refugees. Sky's Emma Hurd reports from Blace, where thousands of people are heading.
At first it seemed just a few had made the journey, but soon the trickle of refugees was to turn into a flood. Some 3,000 headed across the Macedonian border, trudging into this country with what few belongings they could carry. As they were loaded onto buses, we were told they'd come from the Kosovar town of Uraševac. They'd been crammed onto just one train by Serb forces, a journey away from their homes, but with the horrors they'd seen still with them.
He's a teacher for 35 years now, and in front of his eyes, one of his students got shot from a bullet. There were a lot of policemen who beat people up and they forced them out of their homes. She comes from Uroševac, and they just escaped and ran into the train and came here.
She told us one of her 6-month-old twins had been ill for many weeks, but because there were no doctors left in Kosovo, she couldn't get help. Some of these people had been in hiding in the mountain villages, hoping to stay in their country, and yet still forced out.
Every new influx means another village emptied, another town cleared of inhabitants. NATO's bombing raids continue, but so does the Serbs' ethnic cleansing.
They arrived exhausted at the refugee camps. Finally, a place of safety, but a long way from home. Emma Hurd, Sky News, Brashta, Macedonia.
I have no doubt that military and paramilitary forces under the control of Belgrade are continuing to commit atrocities in Kosovo. Our information from a variety of sources, our own independent sources as well as refugee accounts, indicates that Milosevic's forces are responsible for damaging or destroying over 400 villages and towns inside Kosovo, 45 of them in the last week to 10 days. In addition, we are developing evidence that is rather compelling, that is both independently and as a result of refugee interviews and refugee accounts, that in west-central Kosovo, west of Pristina, there is a set of evidence of mass killings and graves associated with those mass killings. We are working with the prosecutor on this new information, and we are hopefully, if possible, going to be able to release it in more detail. But this new information about mass killings in Kosovo is another example of the fact that President Milosevic's policies are aimed towards killing.
HMS Invincible je sada stacioniran u Jadranskom moru. Predsjednik Milošević slabi, a mi ojačavamo. Svakog dana čujemo nove priče o zločinima njegove vojne mašine, a naša odlučnost samo raste. I da vas posjetim zašto se mi borimo, da bi se zapravo posjetio sam Makedoniju i Albaniju, razgovarao sam sa porodicama onih koji su ugroženi, otišao sam u izbjegličke kampove i čuo patnje pojedinaca unutar te mase. Naša vlada neće zapravo odvratiti od svog cilja kada čujemo takve priče. Mi im pružamo svu moguću pomoć, ali ne možemo svakom pojedinačno obezbijediti dom koji je nekada imao. Ovo su Također naši komši Evropljani. 3 sata aviona, let aviona od naše zemlje. Njihova djeca su išli u školu, oni su bili industrijalci, farmeri, a sada svako od njih ima tragičnu priču. Čitav njihov život je preobraćen samo zbog jednog plana etničkog čišćenja. Svi su otjerani u susjedne zemlje samo zbog svog etničkog identiteta. Ovo je zapravo konflikt o vrijednostima moderne Evrope i NATO pomaže u tom konfliktu da se izbore naša prava. Britanci su vodeći u toj pomoći izbjeglicama. Kosovski Albanci su tragične žrtve. Ono što bih želio da uradim je da vam prenesem reakciju britanskih snaga ovdje i svih snaga koje su umješane u humanitarnu pomoć i našu reakciju na krizu, humanitarnu krizu koja se ovdje dešava. Obezbjeđavamo pomoć u obliku šatora i hrane i svako na toj preskonferenciji je sigurno to vidio ili na televiziji ili lično. Imali smo još 500 izbjeglica u ponedjeljak, utorak 1000, 3000 u utorak, srijedu. Ja na granici razumijem da se nalazi otprilike oko 3000 ljudi koji se sprema da uđe u ovaj kamp. Mi pokušavamo da prenosimo našu odgovornost za prijem izbjeglica, za hranu, šatore, UNHCR-u i drugim nevladinim organizacijama. Zamoljeni smo da pomognemo širenju ovog kampa, da bi izašli u susret zapravo izbjeglicama koje se kreću ka ovom kampu i čekaju da uđu u njega.